Good old Earl Weaver.
The crack of the bat.
Manager of the Orioles. He's gonna bring you out to the ball game with Earl Weaver Baseball.
Pine tar.
You know, you'd think Earl Weaver, who cares? But the game itself is pretty significant in what it accomplished.
Earl Weaver Baseball is important because it had a lot of firsts for baseball games.
It was the first commercial computer sports game where you could play an entire season instead of just one game.
You had entire rosters, you could trade players.
You see full stadiums represented graphically on screen, actual baseball parks.
The Amiga version had voice synthesis, which is really cool, also because you could edit how the voices came out and how they pronounced with players, and actually had instructions how to do that.
It was a pretty deep game and offered a manager mode in addition to arcade mode.
And actually made it a very accurate, especially for the time, a very accurate baseball simulation game.
When they designed this game, they actually had Earl Weaver give his thoughts about the game's strategy.
John Madden Football, which came out later, are like the two games that really put EA on that pedestal as like the sports game company.
It's regarded as one of the finest computer games of all time. People may overlook it because it's a sports game, but there was a lot of really important things going on here.
Rygar is a platformer where you attack with a shield called the disc armor. It's very functional.
So you're Rygar with your disc armor, which is a really cool weapon. It sort of like spins out, hits and retracts when it hits the enemies, it comes back in.
Like a big yo-yo.
Yeah, it's a giant yo-yo.
Primarily used for defense, you're using your shield as your offensive weapon.
Yeah.
Rygar by Tecmo is interesting because it's really the first game I saw a port of that the console version was superior to the arcade game.
While Atari and the ColecoVision had all tried to emulate as best as possible the arcade gameplay as it was originally, Nintendo would take these arcade titles and kind of Nintendo-fy them.
While the arcade game was strictly a platformer, the NES version had some Metroid and RPG elements in it.
You could increase your health and spend points to increase your attack, and you could venture wherever you could.
Rygar is friggin' hard.
Ferociously difficult game. Thank God you could continue with this game, or else no one would ever finish this game.
It's kind of an early game for the system. It's interesting. It doesn't do some things particularly well, but it definitely opens the door for later games to improve upon.
There's a lot of little bugs and glitches to this game, but for what they were attempting to do at the time, kind of like Legend of Zelda in a way, where you can just kind of venture out on your own, it got the job done. It was nice.
They made it more personalized.
Yeah.
You know, where arcade games are for quick entertainment.
Yeah, quarters.
These games are more involved. You know, you get the gamer into the game and explore more, do more.
Yeah.
Megaman is an action platformer starring the Blue Bomber, and you've got 6 robot masters to defeat in order to get to Dr. Wily, the mad scientist behind the whole thing. You gotta get him.
So Mega Man was an action platformer, sort of in the tradition of, say, like Astro Boy, where you are a sort of child robot, and you have to fight other robots, and you have your Mega Buster to shoot them.
So the story is Dr. Light and Dr. Wily were working together to create robots to help humanity, and then Dr. Wily reprogrammed them for evil.
The core of the game is simply steal the weapons from the other robot masters as you beat them in different orders, and you can sometimes use those on other robot masters as a weakness against them, and they would be defeated much quicker.
Mega Man is called Rockman in Japan because of rock and roll for one thing, but also it's based on paper, rock, scissors. So Elecman beats Iceman, Iceman beats Fireman, and so on.
It's such a simple concept, but it's really brilliant simplicity because obviously it was enough to hang, 6 classic games on, just on the NES alone.
It's colorful, it was simplistically drawn, but it was done so that you always could see where you needed to go and what was next. The controls were very snappy, and dare I say, other than something like perhaps Mario Brothers, had some of the most responsive controls for an early game on the system, because without them, the game would be near impossible.
The music in Mega Man is so good and so memorable.
The Elecman stage theme, which I do love, is totally stolen from Journey's Faithfully. Just listen, you put it right next to each other. This is where the editor will do something or just completely cut me out of.
The US cover art is freaking ridiculous. It's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. I remember seeing it when I was a kid and I looked at that and just looked at something else.
It was a last minute deal that was made. Like, we need art for this. They just sent it out to some dude and
They sent it out to a third
he did it in
class.
like 2 days or something like that.
The game really stands out as being quite difficult until you memorize certain patterns, and it's sort of where the definition Nintendo hard starts or comes from.
The first Mega Man is known as one of the hardest in the series, and I say that's because the Yellow Devil died so many frickin' times trying to learn that pattern.
You know how that big yellow guy you gotta face? He's pretty cool.
Yellow Devil?
Yellow Devil. He shoots himself across the screen with body part. That's pretty inventive.
He's spiffy.
Mega Man has been re-released multiple times on multiple systems and has had a reboot and started a series that spans over 50 games.
It's totally still worth playing today. Still a lot of fun. The Gutsman stage is a pain in the ass, but it's still a ton of fun.
Man, playing Mega Man on Friday nights, you know, after reading the game for the weekend, man, that's some of the best main memories of gaming I have, actually.
So Mega Man would go on to have a very storied franchise, 6 installments on the NES, 3 that were necessary, and then 3 that no one cares about. That's Mega Man for you. I love Mega Man, kind of. No, I don't.
No, you don't. I do.
Tecnos Japan's Double Dragon, distributed by Taito, was a classic arcade beat-em-up.
Double Dragon pretty much defined the beat 'em up genre. It wasn't the first, it was built off of basically Renegade's engine and sort of expanded upon. But Double Dragon really established the 2-player co-op mode. It established how important it was to have multiple types of enemies on the screen at the same time.
And the game introduced right up front for all the kiddies a scene of domestic man-on-woman violence.
So you're Billy and Jamie Lee, and your girlfriend gets snuck in the stomach and kidnapped. And you have to go save her from all the evil bad guys.
The goal of the game was to beat the Black Warriors and rescue your common love interest, Marion. This is not going to end well.
It established having lots of different weapons you could use. Baseball bat, knives, dynamite, just a fun time. It had a Bobo, a giant Abobo looking, creature that would come after you and beat the hell out of you.
And it was cool that it was cooperative play,
Yes.
cooperative beat 'em up, and with a series of moves that you could pull off.
Besides your standard punches and kicks, you had a headbutt, you had the shoulder throw, you had the pin down attack, you had a jump kick, you had the spinning jump kick as well. Just a really, really fun game. Great sound effects when you punch, it's like psh, psh, psh.
If you play in 1-player mode and you get to Marion, you win, game over. 2-player mode, you gotta fight your buddy. Best man wins Marion's love.
What's kind of interesting about that game is the hardware, most of the time is fine, but it is a little underpowered because there's a tremendous amount of slowdown in that game.
Yeah.
You're jumping and you're kicking and you're punching, and it just kind of seems like they're moving through molasses.
It was the start of a storied franchise, Double Dragon. This franchise existed and was popular for like 10, 12 years.
Double Dragon 5 was released to a fever pitch audience. You just couldn't wait to see that game turn into a one-on-one fighter.
Fighter.
It was ported to so many systems, the NES, the Sega Master System.
Which is arguably the better port,
Yeah.
I'd say, because it's more like the arcade,
And just
2-player
had-
co-op.
Lots of people loved the NES version. I, of course, was spoiled because the arcade version was like my favorite game.
Right.
So I didn't like the NES version because of that. I was a spoiled brat.
And now the other video games for 1987.
Hey guys, I'm Pixel Dan, and these are the other video games of 1987. Street Fighter, the beginning of a franchise. Player 1 takes control of the martial artist named Ryu on a worldwide martial arts contest, while the second player can join in to be Ryu's rival, Ken. Ikari Warriors. The vertically scrolling shoot-'em-up game for the NES was SNK's first major breakthrough in the US, and has become somewhat of a classic on the system. Karnov, the action platform for the arcades, also debuted the mascot of Data East. Penguin Land. In this Sega Master System game, you guide your penguin through a series of puzzle platformer stages, guiding your egg around obstacles such as rocks and polar bears. So there you go, guys, the other video games of 1987. Just because they may not have been as popular as some of the others, doesn't mean they're not fun.